Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively common bug flying type Pokemon Ledyba and its uncommon evolution Ledian, collectively known as the 5-star Pokemon. While they might not come off as the most intimidating of creatures, the members of the Ledyba family are still hardy insectoids that can take quite a surprising beating against the special assaults of others. Ledyba have rounded bodies with rounded heads, a red outer shell, beige lower belly with a segmentation line running right down the middle, and a series of 5 round black spots on their back that can vary slightly in position depending upon the individual member being observed. They have 6 blue unsegmented legs with round 2-digit appendages on the ends used for both grasping and delivering punching strikes in close quarters, making them more dangerous than they might seem initially. They have a beige colored lower mandible and small black antenna, being longer in males than in females, and they have fairly large black eyes that allow them to see quite readily in light even if they are not so great in the darkness. Their evolved form, Ledian, have a similar overall body form in terms of body coloration and limb arrangement, though with black limbs and neck, but the spots on their back have changed position, with only 3 being on their back, and 2 now being located on their head, 1 on the back and another on their forehead. In addition, their lowermost set of limbs have turned into red discernible feet that allow them to walk around on their lower limbs alone, and their eyes have turned a dark blue color, with no discernible pupil hidden by their compound eyes. The members of the Ledyba family are fairly straightforward insectoids to understand, as they share much in common with the normal ladybugs that they are closely related to, though this also hints towards their limited combat ability as well. These creatures are noted for being quite sensitive to temperature, and thus tend to avoid situations where they are exposed to such environmental conditions. In the case of Ledyba, this means that they will often gather and huddle together in swarms during the cold winter months in order to keep their bodies warm, thriving more so in places that are pleasantly warm year-round. While with Ledian, it is shown in their behavior that they really do not like the hot midday sun, and thus will wrap themselves in leaves and huddle in tall grass during the day in order to avoid the scorching rays of the sun, only being active after sundown and only a few hours after sunrise. These creatures enjoy feeding on fresh berries and similar foodstuffs, but they are primarily noteworthy for their ability to attack and eat pests like aphids with ease and readiness. While normal ladybugs are fit enough to do this job on their own, Ledyba in particular are used to handle more annoying crop pests like other bug-type Pokemon, and are easy enough to train and control that they can be a crop saver and are used by many farms where they are natively found in the wild. Unfortunately, these critters are not designed to really be able to attack larger insect Pokemon, as their offensive power is quite weak, but they do have an interesting solution to this. The hands of these creatures are noteworthy for not only their rounded appearance, but also their incredibly sturdy form, and by throwing all of their hands repeatedly at a target, these insectoids can utilize the Mach Punch and Comet Punch attacks later in life, and can thus literally batter the opposition with a barrage of punches to make themselves a potential threat. Even in an evolved state though, the actual physical strength of these creatures is quite low, so they make up for the lack of hard-hitting power in their punches by throwing many of them, helping to counteract their otherwise poor combat ability. Thankfully, the insect mentality they possess can make them a bit of a threat if they are pushed to their limit, and their tendency to wake up at the crack of dawn allows them to wake from sleep more readily than others, allowing these creatures to possess the swarm and early bird abilities as base abilities. On that same note, the extremely skittish nature of Ledyba when not in a swarm can allow them to have Rattled as a hidden ability, while the stronger exoskeletons of their evolved form Ledian allow them to focus more on their punching strikes for offense, and thus grant them access to the Iron Fist ability as a hidden ability. As far as their stats are concerned, in the case of Ledian, the only thing they really have going for them is the fact that their shells are covered with a glossy coating that grants them the capacity to reflect energy-based strikes more effectively than one might initially think, in turn granting them an above-average base special defense stat for a fully evolved bug and flying-type Pokemon, and they are decently quick to move, granting them an above-average base speed stat for a fully evolved bug-type Pokemon. Everything else, though, is quite below average, and they heavily underperform as a whole in those regards. As such, while they might not always be fit for serious combat, these creatures can take a special beating and at least give them some time to deliver a few blows in a fight before they are downed for good. Ledyba are noted for being extremely timid by nature and rarely ever try to do anything unless they are in the presence of a large group. In fact, unless they are present in a sizable swarm, these creatures will refuse to move at all for the most part, not including those owned by trainers. This is because they know that their current forms are quite frail and physically weak, so they rely on numbers to not only serve as a deterrent against predators, but also to simply ensure the survival of the next generation, as the loss of a few members in a swarm rarely does much to harm their populations in an area. As such, Ledyba are rarely ever seen on their own, and they effectively work together in order to fend off potential attackers, using advanced moves like Reflect in order to protect their nest, the collective barrier formed by a swarm in this case being incredibly difficult to break through, even with moves like Brick Break on account of their double resistance to fighting type attacks and the sheer number of shields present at one time. In order to make sure that the swarm moves and operates as a whole, these creatures naturally secrete a fluid from the base of their legs that acts as a form of communication between individual Ledyba and swarms as a whole in regards to the chemical odor that the fluids emit as a reflection of their emotional state. If a single entity feels threatened, the smell will permeate through the air and alert the rest of the swarm, causing them to combine together to take on whatever is causing a fear response in a single member. If one smells a sour note to the odor, it is usually a sign to back off immediately, as it indicates anger and thus an approaching offensive threat, so people should do their best not to make Ledyba angry, lest the full wrath of their swarm be placed upon them for even the smallest of transgressions. Ledian are nowhere near as skittish as their pre-evolved form, and are able to survive on their own fairly readily, so it is not uncommon to see them flying about as individuals, though they can still travel in swarms if they feel the need to. These creatures prefer to live in environments where the air is clean and crisp all year round, as they have very delicate respiratory systems, and are especially common to see in areas where the weather is equally fair all of the time with as little light pollution as possible at night. This is because, while they can feed on berries for sustenance, a large amount of their overall power intake actually comes from starlight, as a substitute for sunlight because of their general weakness to hot temperatures. This amazing power is only possible because they possess a series of photoreceptors on their backs that are right beneath the black spots in their body, and are thus used to directly absorb starlight and use it later as a form of power. These spots will actually change in size depending upon the amount of light available for use and absorption, with them being at their smallest in the daytime or during cloudy nights, as the photoreceptors are easily damaged and not so easily repaired, and thus must be kept as small as possible when not needed to minimize the chances of them being damaged in any way. It is further noted that if these creatures absorb a particularly large amount of starlight during a night, they may get rid of excess energy and waste at the same time by scattering a glowing powder. This powder is actually an extremely potent fertilizer that helps make the environment around them much lusher and greener. But so far, the fact that the dust deteriorates rapidly in sunlight means that its commercial use has been naturally stonewalled. Even so, it is said that this glowing dust is a sign of good luck, and anyone that has it sprinkled on them is said to have good things happen to them in the near future. So at the very least, these creatures can be seen as a boon for the natural environment and a friendly face to have around one's garden. Though they might not come off as the most gifted of fighters, the members of the Ledyba family are still hardy creatures that can more than make good use of their anatomy to deal at least some minor damage in a fight. They might be just as easily squashed as some other bug types, but they can at least take some form of special damage and last a little longer than usual in that regard. If you do come across a swarm of these little critters, do yourself a favor and try not to anger them if you can. They might not have much that they can do at a young age, but that might not matter much if you anger one and end up getting pummeled by the combined swarm that is likely to follow you until you've learned your lesson. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description.
Yeah, no.
With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.